Okay, so thank you all for joining this week's Weekly Wave. We do have a number of updates for you all this week in relation to the wave requirements that was released this morning. We will get right into that in just a minute, but to start off, I'm going to go over a few reminders in just a minute. All right, going into some reminders. So as I've said in previous weeks, our end of year reports are beginning to open, and a large majority of them should now be open throughout single sign-on and in the wave. So make sure for the reports that you are aware of that do use student data, that you are reviewing the data validation wizard, district ownership wizard, and the wave and in single sign-on, and in the STN system and XSD wizard. All four of these are going to give you an idea of any issues that are occurring, either with information that we're receiving from your student information system, or issues with students who need to have an STN assigned to them. For reports, the demographic overlay is now open. That will be closing on May 14th. And any questions related to that report should be going to the accountability office. Their email is on the screen, and their direct line is 405-522-5169 if you do need to leave them a message specifically about an issue that you're seeing in that report. The annual statistical report at the student level is open as well. State aid has been doing a fantastic job of reaching out to districts and helping districts with issues related to your calendars and with attendance. So if there are any issues that you would need our office specifically to take a look at, feel free to reach out to both of our offices, and we'll get back to you. We do have our request schedule posted on our website. We only request for student daily attendance 3 times a week. So if you are making changes, say on a Monday, don't be surprised if you're not seeing that information on the ASR the next day. We only request for student daily attendance and transportation without prompt on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. All other information on this report should be requested on a daily basis, aside from Sunday, automatically without anybody at the State Department specifically needing to go in and specifically request for that data. If for some reason you're making changes in the student information system and you're needing that data pulled on a day that we're not pulling it, or after you're aware of us pulling that data, now you can reach out to us through email or phone and ask for a data pull for your daily attendance or transportation. We have been getting a lot of questions about the enrollment graduation, rightfully so, but the correct office to be reaching out to is accountability. That is a correction window that only exists in the accountability reporting application. So the questions for that specific window is best directed to that staff. Their email address is on your screen, as well as their phone number, which I can repeat, but will not. And I accidentally repeated that last bullet here, so we already know the ASR is open. So we will get right into another report update related to the dropout report in the wave. We are very aware that for some of you that are doing on-screen data entry for the last few days, it has been reverting back to the information that we last received from your student information system when the report refreshes overnight. This is not anything that you're doing. For those of you who have reached out to us and have not heard anything back yet, again, not something that you're doing. This is a bug on our end, and our development team is still looking, as I speak, at the potential issue of why this is occurring. So we do have a note about this on the WAVE homepage. So do be on the lookout for an update from our office on when we are 100% sure that we know that the issue has been squashed. And also for the Easy Grad and enrollment graduation updates, those should be coming through on the WAVE report. Right now, if you're really savvy, you can also see that on the accountability reporting webpage in single sign-on, they also have a list of students listed as a dropout. In a lot of cases, those subsets of students may not match. The subset of students for state and federal reporting, those are going to be coming from the WAVE. The information accountability is for display purposes only for this year. So again, if you're wondering why there are two subsets of dropouts and why one may have a smaller amount of students than the other or vice versa, do know that the report in the WAVE is what we will be using for state and federal reporting. Okay, onwards to the WAVE requirements. So like I said, the requirements were released this morning, and we will continue to use the Airtable. This information was sent out this morning to district superintendents through our normal Gov delivery method. If you'd like to get subscribed to that newsletter, we don't send emails very often, but when we do, they're usually related to pretty important information. So if you'd like to get access to that or see or get those emails when we do send things out, you can send us an email to studentdatainfo@sde.ok.gov, and we will get you added to our subscribers list. This information was already sent to the student information system vendors also, for those of you who are curious. And I will circle back to the quick demo of the Airtable for those of you who have not seen it and maybe a little curious of how you can navigate it. It does look very similar to Google Sheets or Microsoft Excel for those of you who have used either program before, but there are some things throughout this Airtable that may not be 100% clear if this is the very first time you've looked at it. So I'm just going to give you a brief overview. Like I said, we will continue to use the Airtable. And for those of you who would rather have a CSV file to look at in Excel, we will make that available tomorrow. And a direct link to download that will be in the Airtable, so you don't have to find another link from us and keep that bookmarked somewhere. So like I said, I'm going to do a little quick demo of the layout of this Airtable, but I do want to highlight for those of you who already have the link that if you want to look at the information horizontally, you can use the spacebar, or sorry, vertically, this should say vertically. If you want to view the information vertically, you can click the spacebar in any cell and it'll expand it so you don't have to scroll as much. Or if you wanted to blow up and see in an expanded view a specific cell of information, say you want it to just read the information related to our request schedule, what is the description of that, you can also use a on-screen option to do that as well. Right now, there are actually 28, there are some duplicates in here, 28 changes for this year's requirements. Most of them are related to adding business rules where they were missing. And there's one major collection that we are going to be requiring for this upcoming school year. But this upcoming school year will be more focused on making sure that we are getting the information that we are requiring your student information system vendors to have available to send to us. Making sure that we're getting that information if it is put into the student information system, and being able to display that information back to districts in a meaningful way. So we're not just collecting a lot of data and it goes into a black box. We want to be able to show you, this is what we're getting when you're sending us classes or student enrollments or anything of the sort. So that is our main focus for next year. So we're not really focusing on collecting more data. We want to make sure that we're getting the data that we're expecting to. So to quickly go through the changes before I go into the quick demo, like I said, we will go over the changes that have occurred for this year. So this is not a list of all of the changes. This is kind of a highlight for most of these. I'm not going to explain for some of these the business rules that we've added because they have been in play for more than a few years. It just has not been documented in our requirements document. So we're just adding those things that you're already doing. But for this call today and these slides, we'll be going over the ones that may affect you in terms of entering new data for new and existing students. So for addresses, this is addresses for the school, district, and for the student. So all three of these bullet points will apply to those three categories. So if you're putting in a county for an address, it must be one of the 77 counties in Oklahoma. We're not expecting to get countries or states in here. Must be one of the 77 counties in Oklahoma, or it will result in a validation error next year. Same thing with postal codes. We will expect a 5-digit postal code. And if you are choosing to send an extended zip code, it must be in the 12345-12345 format in order to pass our validations. We are also requiring for the grid location to be sent for any specific, for the schools, sorry, and districts. This is not something that we're expecting you to send for student addresses. This is only for schools. So I apologize for making that blanket statement before, but for grid location, this is only for schools. We will expect to get the grid location of where that school site is. For changes to the attendance code information, we have just added links to the documentation related to 5 mandated attendance codes that you all have been using for a few or 1 year now. So for ease of use, we've condensed all of that down into one area so you can go and find the guidance that we released explaining the reasoning of why these codes are mandated and in what situations you are to use those codes. For calendar date, we are going to begin to require the information related to whether or not a calendar day counts towards student attendance or teacher attendance. This is not going to be used for the June 15th teacher attendance and accessibility data collection that NANEDA is collecting related to your CRDC data. This is just completely separate data collection for now. So for your calendars, you've already been doing this for students, but now we'll be including teachers as well to know whether or not a day in your calendar, if that counts towards teacher attendance. For the calendar summary, for the graduation date, it was optional before, but now we are making it a conditional data point to be sent. If you have a high school in your district and a graduation has occurred, that date should be sent. Otherwise, you can continue to not send us anything. And the same thing goes for, not the same thing, but for minutes per day. We are expecting for if a day is listed as instructional, that we are seeing at least 150 minutes in that calendar day. For contact info, we are going to begin to require for each site that we have at least one person labeled as the principal. And at the district level, we are going to be requiring that at least one person, staff member that wise, is assigned the position title of superintendent. For those two folks, the phone number and email address is also going to be required for either. If it's the same person, you can put the same information, but we do need to have the email address and phone number of the person labeled as superintendent and principal. For student personal or student demographics, we are going to be requiring and making available to you the ability to send 576 recognized tribes as listed from the U.S. Bureau of Indian Affairs. So if a student has a tribal affiliation, you are able to pick from that list of 576 recognized tribes and send that up to the state. This is related to a House bill that recently passed. And we do have more detail about that, as well as a link to the bill in our Airtable as well, if you have not seen that and would like to. For student section marks, we are requiring that if you are sending us is final for any particular grade, that you be aware that if you're sending multiple grades that are all marked as is final, we will be using the most recent for reporting purposes. So for post-secondary opportunities that the accountability office does, if you sent a B, and an F for a student for a particular course, if the F was the last thing that was sent to the wave, that will be the grade that is posted for whichever term that applies to. So be careful with these grades that are being marked as final, and be cognizant that we will be using the last one sent for reporting purposes. And to that same tune, we will be requiring that a letter or percentage grade be sent. And if you are sending those, that we get letters, grades in the A, B, C, D, or F format. And for percentages, that we're getting values of something between 0 and 100. This is for reporting purposes, to make it very clear and for us to understand what we are reporting. We've had a lot of instances over the past few years where we say we're only getting a letter grade for a student, and the letter grade that we were getting meant something only to the school district. Say we got an S+, we could interpret that a few different ways. So just by getting the letter grade in the A through F grading scale will make it much easier for us to properly display those grades and to use them for a few different purposes here, and as well as percentage. We may not know how to interpret a grade that is 1,000% for a student. So again, just making sure that we have consistent grade interpretations going forward will make reporting for us a lot cleaner going forward. And I will circle back here. There's a few questions about that graduation date in the chat. The graduation date that I'm mentioning is for the calendar, not for the student. So you'll still continue to do what you have been for the student demographic information. Only enter that graduation date for the student if they actually graduated. If they did not, you don't need to put anything in there. This calendar summary graduation date is just an overall day of when the graduation ceremony is supposed to be occurring, not the actual graduation date of the student. So hopefully that answers that question. All right, so that is all of the changes that should affect data input for new and existing students. Like I said, any other business rule that we have added or any other change that we have added was either in previous versions of the requirements, we were missing a definition that existed in the standard that we are following, or we didn't have a business rule that has been followed for years documented in the waive requirements. So most of those, that's about 10 of those situations, but we have gone through all of the changes that should affect the data input for all of you. So again, I'm going to stop sharing for just a second and go really quick to give you an overview of what the error table looks like for those of you who have not seen it. 1 second. Okay, should be sharing this screen. Okay, so you all should see my screen here, and it's labeled waive requirements for 2021-22. By default, one of the links that was in the Gov delivery, it would take you directly to the list of changes that I just went over. By default, everything is collapsed, so you're not overwhelmed with a bunch of text right off the bat. If you'd like to expand a specific object to read through that, you can go here to the left of any object name, click the little triangle or caret, and you can read that information that way. Or because you can see that these are grouped by a specific name, and it says it's grouped by a field, you can click here on grouped by one field, and there is a collapse all and expand all button. What you want to do is click the expand all button, and there you go. Every single object name has now been expanded, and you can read through the information there. At the beginning of this, I did mention that you can view the data in a few different ways. By default, you are scrolling horizontally left to right to read the information. If you wanted to get a view of this vertically, you can either click anywhere in a specific row, and using your space bar on the keyboard, click that, and it will open, and you can read it that way. Or the very first cell here, you can click this up and down arrow and bring it up that way as well and read the information. There are hyperlinks all throughout this, so if you wanted to get more information about what a city is, what the definition of a city is for the waive requirements, you can just click it and it'll bring that up, and it's an endless loop. You can keep going. Anything that looks clickable, you can click it. So we've tried to make sure that we've made this as maybe not easy, but as integrated as we could with all of the other information going on throughout this here document. So like I said, or there's a comment here in the chat, where will we find the fields for the graduation date for the high school? If you're talking about the graduation date for the calendar, you can do that a few different ways. Since this is a recent change, you can find the calendar summary here, and you can either, like I said, using your space bar on the keyboard, click that, and then it will expand that way. Or because you really only care about reading about the graduation date, you can go in here, click graduation date, and it'll bring up more information about that. And since graduation date relates to a date in your calendar, if you're curious about what that definition is, you can get that too. So, and if later on you don't remember that where this is at, there's also a search bar here. It'll search any of these tabs, or if you go here into apps and just type in graduation date and search, you can bring up any instance in the waive requirements that mentions the graduation date. And if you're talking about where this is in your student information system, we do not have that exact mapping just yet. This should be a field that is already in your student information system. It may, but it may not, because we did have this labeled as optional. So the vendors are, I'm sure, very hard at work right now, finalizing and making their press releases for all of this information. So I'm sure bear with them right now for all of these changes. So I'm going to stop sharing here for that and back to the PowerPoint. All right, here we go. Okay, so let me, before I move on from this, make sure I've answered. For the, let me go to that section here. There's a question in the chat, says, on the grades, are you saying that we couldn't use, say, NS as a grade, for instance, as a music grade? No, we're not saying that you cannot locally, you can use that code locally. When it is sent up to the state, we need it to be in a format that is one of the two of these. So if S is mapped to say this means satisfactory, and this means that this is a or a B or a C or a D or an F, that mapping will need to be worked out so that when the grade is taken from the student information system and is sent to the state, we get it in a format that we understand. And yes, we can post the grid location in the chat. Give me 1 second here. I will. Here. 1 second. Before I go on here, this is something I do want to highlight and make sure we have a recording of for this call. Let me share my screen one more time and go back to the waiver requirements. So if you ever wanted to share if you're ever in here and you wanted to share a specific link to a specific field or thing in the requirements, doesn't really matter what. If you go in here, and like I said, using the space bar or using this up and down arrow, if you click here, if you notice, I'm going to do it again and take a look at the URL. The URL will change whenever you expand a record. So again, I'm going to do this. I'm going to expand a record. You will notice that the URL has now changed. If I copy and open a new tab, paste the same URL, when I go to it, that will automatically be opened here. So the link in the chat will take you directly to the change for the grid location, and there's the Google link. For support is how you can find and enter the latitude and longitude for the school address there. So, and like I said, trying to make this very integrated so you're not having to keep and hold a bunch of links. So hopefully that's helpful. It may not be to a lot of you, but for some of you, I hope this is. And for the CSV, I'll share again, we will be posting it here. There's a tab that is printable waive requirements. We will have the CSV here with a link that you can go to download that. It'll be similar to how you can download our archived waive requirements in CSV format right now, or in Excel format. Right now you can, if you wanted to, download it via CSV, but the issue with doing that is we do have a lot of codes that begin with the with 0, and CSV will, if you just open it automatically, it will remove those leading zeros, and the codes that you have will be off. So this is one limitation to the Airtable right now is not having the option to also download it to Excel. But if you didn't want to wait for us to get this to you in Excel format, you can download whichever tab you wanted to going forward. So stop sharing and back to the PowerPoint. All right. So as mentioned last week, our wave rollover is scheduled to occur on July 12th. And we will be offline for 2 weeks. So that means no data will be sent from your student information system to the wave, and the wave will not be sending information likewise back down to your student information system for those 2 weeks. When we are rolling over and after we are rolling over, after we are done rolling over, I'm so sorry, we will no longer be receiving full year 2021 information. So if you're making edits in your student information system, say in August, for information or enrollment instances that have occurred over the summer, and you're putting those in your student information system in August, remember that we will not get that information sent to us automatically. Your student information system will be set up to send full year 2022 information only. And this is not something that we are choosing to do. This is just a practice that we have to follow. Once we are done rolling over, after that 2-week window, we will send out an email and let everyone know that we are back up and we can start accepting data. We will have reached out to the student information system vendors beforehand to let them know as well, so they can make sure that if they are facilitating the rollover on your behalf, that they have done so and gotten all their ducks in a row for reporting full year 22 data. So it should be a pretty smooth process, but as long as we are not receiving full year 2021 information after that rollover, you should be good to go after that date. And yes, we are still, to my knowledge, I've not heard otherwise or seen otherwise to make me think so. We should be good to go with getting the virtual transfer system live in July. And to answer another question here unrelated to the waiver rollover, there is a question asking whether or not the OSS or out of school suspension attendance code is going to be used in the chronic absenteeism rate. And to my knowledge, unless something has changed, the answer is yes. To the accountability office, an absence is an absence regardless of its excused or unexcused status. They do make some exceptions for medically related absences, but to my knowledge, there are no exceptions for out of school suspensions. And I do not have a date right now for the virtual transfer system on when we'll be sending out guidance for that. Oh, one more question about the wave rollover. The rollover time in July, will there be any concerns about validating the PEBT data, or will the PEBT data validations be complete by then? Eric is not on here today. They should be complete by then. To my knowledge, we should be okay. But again, if we foresee that there's going to be any issue with our PEBT rollout, we will say something blanketly across the board to as many people as we can. Eric mentioned last week that districts will be required to validate the information that you can see on your screen. So information related to demographics, attendance, basis of admission, free and reduced status, economic disadvantage status, and that's pretty much it. The application, in order to review all this information, is still being worked out. There's still a few kind of last minute user interface things that need to be taken care of for that application, but and I do not have a set date at this moment in time of when that will be released. But we have just given the directive right now of not rolling over until districts are 100% sure that that PEBT data is validated as best as it can be, or as perfect as it can be. All right, so that is pretty much all that I have for this week's call. We will, like I said, get that printable version of the waive requirements document out on the Airtable on the printable waive requirements link, tab on the Airtable. So just be out on the lookout for that. It should be up by the time most districts are starting their days tomorrow. So that'll be there. And will continue to be there for the foreseeable future. And we will be adding more to this, integrating more information on if you're sending us this data point, it's being used for this report and also has this validation on it, and things like that, to try and make it very clear on what we're using the data for, what we're validating against, and why we're using the data. So bear with us on getting all of that out over the next couple of months here. But for now, I will stop talking and stop the recording and open the chat.